Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Tuesday morning to you all. Hope you guys are doing well out there this morning and having a great start to your day and a great week out there so far. Here to bring you the latest on what's going to happen weather-wise for your Tuesday. Once again, the main storyline is going to be severe weather. Yesterday was a pretty active day across the Midwest. We had an upgrade to a moderate risk from an enhanced risk sometime late yesterday afternoon to the evening hours, and it certainly materialized as we had a significant wind threat that did materialize for certain areas. So hope you guys are doing okay. Let me know what you're seeing out there across Illinois, Indiana, and all the other surrounding states that were impacted. As short range models, we're having a hard time getting a handle on it, but I think the NAM probably overall did the best with yesterday's event. So we're going to try to figure out today's event. We have multiple areas of energy out there. What are they going to do as we lead into the afternoon, the evening hours? Are they going to weaken? Are they going to re-strengthen? More energy going to fire off old boundaries, all that kind of stuff. We'll break it all down for you folks. Try to zoom into a lot of different areas and get this one figured out for you folks. Talk about even how much rain could fall also. And then at the very end of the video, we'll discuss our pattern coming up. We'll really talk about the Southeast. I was very lucky last night. My area got 3/4 of an inch of rain, almost an inch of rain actually, from just a little area of thunderstorms. Just happened to hit my area, but there's a lot of other areas across the Southeast that really need the rain. The Mid-Atlantic, there's other portions of the country that need it also, but especially the Southeast has been a very hot and brutal summer. So we're going to talk about how things could change in a more favorable pattern for a little bit cooler temperatures, but also more potential rainfall setup. So if you guys have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Like the video if you like it. And if anybody has anything that I can pray about or pray over, as always, please put those in the comments below. So let's get rocking and rolling. So this is the radar out there across the lower 48. As mentioned about a minute or so ago, there's a lot of areas of energy out here. One's trailing off out of Maine into New Brunswick. You got a lot of energy up here in Canada. We got a area of energy that we need to watch as this continues to move west to east. It's moving through southern Ontario right now. That's what we call a mesoscale convective vortex. Has a literally quite like a spin to it. Just the overall structure of this energy has a spin to it. This will pose a risk of maybe a small tornado risk throughout the late morning hours into this afternoon. But we have to watch what this energy does as it moves across southern Ontario over the next few hours and eventually gets into New York State. Could drape as far south as like northern PA. And then we'll just watch additional energy that'll fire south of that. We got a big area of storms surging through areas of the southern Midwest, all the way back here to Missouri. Especially through the southern half of Illinois and Indiana. We have flash flood warnings. We have ongoing severe thunderstorm warnings. We have another area of energy moving through the plains. Kansas especially, we got a lot of rainfall just across Oklahoma and Kansas. And this is severe warned also. You see these red boxes where you have severe warned storms. Outside of that, some energy diving in with the associated trough into the Dakotas, the northern plains, and still just some monsoonal energy out here across the southwest. And this will get a little bit more juiced up later on this afternoon into this evening, and we'll talk about that also. So there's a lot of things going on this morning. Watches, warnings, and advisories. We do have a lot of heat advisories in the orange, excessive heat warnings in the purple color. It's going to be a very hot day once again across the mid-Atlantic, southern New England, the Carolinas, especially the coastal regions. But, the Mississippi Valley will be brutally hot today, where you do have the excessive heat warnings, especially high humidity mixed with actually high air temperatures will just lead to heat indices. Feels like temperatures upwards to 110, close to 115 in some cases. Flood watches are up, so you have a very moist air mass right up against a very hot air mass, and not up against, they're working together, tag teaming. That's why we have these excessive heat warnings and heat advisories, as we have a very moist and hot air mass right in place. So heat advisories are kind of getting reissued up here in areas of Washington, Oregon, excessive heat watches. The heat will return for you folks. It's already in the beginning stages of returning for the western U.S. as a ridge flexes out here in the coming days. But as far as the excessive rainfall outlook, of course, we have the traditional green area, which is your 5% risk. of rainfall exceeding flash flood guidance, but we always pay more attention to the yellows and the reds and the pinks that we see on here. So the yellow area, that's where we have a slight risk of flash flooding, which means you have a 15% risk of rainfall exceeding flash flood guidance within 25 miles in a given location. So draped boundary right in here where a lot of energy is riding with the associated trough digging down. So this is where you'll have most of your more concentrated energy right into here. The Storm Prediction Center outlook. I do think this will change. It did change yesterday. We had the upgrade, but I do think that we could potentially get a slight risk introduced between both of these slight risks. So you got a slight risk right now, level 2 out of 5 in the yellow. Includes areas in Nebraska, Kansas, eastern Colorado, Oklahoma, and then the panhandle of Texas. And then we got a big slight risk across some higher populated regions like the Northeast down to the Mid-Atlantic, D.C., New York City, Philadelphia, Baltimore, Pittsburgh, Binghamton, Albany. Portions of northern West Virginia, northern VA, even sections of southeastern Ohio. Level 2 out of 5 risks. Marginal risk in between. But I do think there'll be a slight risk probably issued somewhere in here. Maybe they connect. But there could be some sort of connection right into here or just a third slight risk right into here. So I'll talk about why here in a second. But as of now, the information that we do have around 7 a.m. Eastern Time, this is what we got. There's a 2% risk of a tornado here for a good chunk of central Nebraska and then areas of southern South Dakota. And there's a 2% risk of a tornado up here in areas of New York State and Vermont also. This is for that energy that I just showed you guys on radar that's in southern Ontario right now that will eventually, by the time we get to the daytime, the daytime heating, the heating of the day this afternoon, I'm getting my words twisted up a little this morning. By the time this energy moves into this area, it will be this afternoon. Heating will occur, and we will have an opportunity for a tornado or two with this mesoscale convective vortex MCV for shorts. This is a little bit different than what we call an MCS, a mesoscale convective system, just kind of a complex line of storms, damaging winds with embedded tornadoes, typically a big threat with that, even hail. But a vortex is when it has a little bit, I would say, a more elevated risk of a tornado, and the complex of storms actually has a spin to it. There's like a just a spinach in nature. So, but the wind threat today, there is a 15% risk of winds exceeding 55 to 60 miles per hour in these two yellow areas, and then the hail threat. Not as high for the Northeast, but for the plains, 15% risk of hail exceeding 1 inch in diameter or larger. There's a chance we might upgrade to an enhanced risk somewhere, but I think slight risk is a good way to go. But I do think we'll have a bump up from a marginal to a slight in certain areas, like the Midwest. So the Southeast today, stagnant hot pattern in place. There is going to be a chance of pop-up showers and storms, especially for Florida. There it is down here. You can see these splotches of greens, little pockets, little dots of red and yellow down here, orange. That's where we'll have some pop-up showers and storms, really anywhere in the state of Florida. I think we'll have an area of energy that will try to get going around Asheville, maybe the upstate of South Carolina, some storm action there. We will talk more about what you're seeing in Ohio and Kentucky in a separate timestamp. I'll have that up for you. But the Southeast in general, the good news is maybe Southwest Virginia, Western Virginia. I know my folks tuning in from western sections of VA have not seen rain a lot. These areas right here in Virginia have not seen a lot of rain. This run of the HRRR model likes the idea of some storms firing up in this area. So hopefully you guys can get some storms, but you see a very stormy late afternoon, evening down here in Florida, especially I would say the western sections of the peninsula of Florida. But you see this evening we got some storms in South Georgia too, and could get some energy ongoing overnight across areas of Alabama and Mississippi, maybe even North Georgia into the wee hours of the morning. So in general, all this energy is surging south. So we had a lot of bad storm and action and stuff like that in the Midwest today. It's shunted a little bit further south and east. Tomorrow it'll be even a little bit more further south than that, except that this loses its steam and just more of just storm nature. Nothing too crazy severe weather-wise tomorrow as of now. That could change. So, but once again, I'll kind of be biased to my folks near in the Carolinas and the Virginia, Georgia area and surrounding places you see on here. because it is going to be a very hot day. First off, DC going to get over 100 degrees a day. Air temperature. Another brutally hot day from Charlotte, Columbia, Raleigh, Fayetteville, Augusta, upper 90s to low 100s. This is just your air temperature. It's not your heat index. Your air temperature. Very hot in West Virginia, Eastern Tennessee, Kentucky, down to Georgia. Just hot. Hot day. And if you look at the actual feels like temperature with this, look at these heat indices. I mean, guys, this is lunchtime today. The heat index is already 105 in Columbia, 107 in Myrtle Beach. Yeah, just already 100 in Charlotte, 103 in Augusta. When we take it to the prime heating of the day, heat indices are going to be closing in on 110 to 115 in certain areas, 110 in DC, Delmarva into the 110s. Just brutally hot. You're going to be begging for a storm to fire here, and hopefully we'll get it. But the Northeast today, there's a couple of areas to watch. The first is this area in southern Ontario right now. Model's doing a pretty decent job on picking up on this, and I think they've been picking up on this pretty well the last 24 hours. This energy will move into western New York. I remember talking about this in yesterday morning's video, and I think, around lunchtime today, we could have some storms in the Buffalo to Rochester area, maybe just after, and this energy will continue to surge through New York State. We're going to zoom into this here in a second. But I'm telling you, if you live, from Buffalo, Rochester, Finger Lakes region, Syracuse, up to the Tuckhill Plateau, the Adirondacks, all the way to Albany, you want to watch these storms as they move west to east throughout the morning and afternoon hours. You want to have a reliable radar to look at, because this area of storms could pack one heck of a punch throughout the daytime period. By the time they get into Vermont, Western Mass, this run of the HRRR model says this is still hanging pretty good. And then it begins to weaken as we get into southern Maine. Maybe just left over some heavy rain, some showers, maybe some storm activity. Another area to watch is just down here in the Mid-Atlantic in general. But if we just kind of zoom into New York here, surrounding states, Buffalo getting some storms as early as lunchtime today. Rochester maybe an hour or two later. Finger Lakes region here. Syracuse, Tuckhill Plateau, Adirondacks. Binghamton down here. This is around 3 p.m., 4 p.m., 5 p.m., 6 p.m., 7 p.m., 8 p.m. Look at Western Mass getting hit. Berkshires, areas of northwestern Connecticut. Some storms down there in New York City. You see northern New Jersey. And this loses some steam as it starts to get into New Hampshire, eastern Mass, and then Maine. But this entire complex of storms today could pack one heck of a punch. I think the HRRR model has the right idea with these storms. And if we look at the predicted wind gust swath with these, and I'm actually going to look at the most recent run here. And, I think that it has a pretty good idea. We're going to get some 40, 50 mile per hour wind gusts with this line of storms that sweeps through like the southern tier of New York, maybe northern PA. Could extend as far north as the Adirondacks and go right through the valley of New York and then getting to Vermont. So, Robin, in Vermont, southern Vermont, you might definitely get some rain from this later this afternoon to this evening. Could get some intense storms that you see down here in New York City. You see these, and this is the wind gust swath. Sometimes this is overdone, but you see these pockets of orange and red. That's 40, 50, 60 mile per hour wind gust. And you do compare this with like the updraft Felicity swath, because this will indicate rotation with some of these storms. And folks, I mean, it does show an elevated area right here in central New York State. And that's right where you have your 2% risk of a tornado. This might bump up to a 5% risk. But as of now, this run of the HRRR model likes the idea of rotating thunderstorms embedded in this MCV, mesoscale convective vortex, right here in the Finger Lakes region up to Syracuse, kind of south of Watertown into central New York State. You see these highlighted colors in the greens and yellows and orange-red color here. That is where this particular run is indicating rotation with some of these storms. Therefore, there's a risk of tornadoes. Now, we move a little bit further south, include more of the Mid-Atlantic, just centered right in PA. This is going to be a more complex situation to figure out today. I think the storm mode won't be quite as widespread as this entire piece of energy that'll surge through New York to your north, as you can tell. But there is a slight risk that extends all the way down here. We're going to have some big heating. So any storms that fire today, guys, in eastern PA, Maryland, northern VA, West Virginia, Delaware, New Jersey. Any storms that do fire can pack one heck of a punch. A high-end thermodynamic environment. Not as much kinematic-wise, but anything that does fire here, you see these just pockets of reds and yellows, they could pack a punch. DC, you might get some nasty storms around 3 to 4 to 5 p.m. this afternoon, and then they'll just kind of drift through New Jersey, the Delmarva, and that's all she wrote. Now, you look at the NAM's version of this, it's not a ton different. It's just a little bit more widespread with these storms. For example, you get to around lunchtime today, you already got some storms south of Pittsburgh, got some storms up here in northern PA, storms down here in like northern sections of West Virginia. We take this to about 3 p.m. Some storms are moving through the northern half of VA, right through areas of West Virginia, south of Morgantown. You got storms moving through southern and southeastern PA around 4 or 5 p.m. And this shows an all-out line of storms a little bit later on the NAM, moving through the D.C. Baltimore area, maybe up to Philadelphia, around 4 to 5 to 6 p.m. And, you know, this eventually gets some storms all the way down into like central VA. So very well could get some storms into Long Island later on today too. So we just got to watch these. It's not as widespread in coverage as the HRRR model, but the NAM did better yesterday, so the NAM might be onto something. I know I don't do that often. Wife got me some coffee this morning, so that was really nice of her. I spilled it on my shirt too. But anyways, the South Central U.S., you know, Texas, besides Hurricane Beryl, if you just kind of take out Hurricane Beryl, over the last several weeks, Texas has been pretty quiet weather-wise. We had a very active spring. If you kind of deduct Beryl out the equation, it's been a pretty quiet stretch of weather, and today will be no different. It's just been hot, stagnant air. So you're going to see a couple little pieces of energy, one up here in Illinois, Missouri. We're going to zoom into this area here shortly. But you see energy in Colorado. Some of these storms could definitely produce some damaging winds, some hail out here in eastern Colorado. Some of this might drift into northern New Mexico later this afternoon, this evening. We'll have to watch for a line of storms or just area of energy that kind of moves out of Colorado into the panhandle of Oklahoma, the panhandle of Texas, southwestern Kansas later this evening. Could have some nasty storms surging through southern Missouri if this is right. But listen, models struggle with all these areas of energy. So we might could have energy kind of straddling the Kansas-Oklahoma border around, what time is this? About 10 p.m. Central Time tonight. But this run shows nothing. Now, I don't think we're going to get much down here in Texas. But it does show overnight tonight. It's the wee hours of the morning. Storms eventually cruising kind of along that Kansas-Oklahoma line corridor. And then we're waking up tomorrow morning with what this model is showing. Some rain across Oklahoma. More heavier rain in Arkansas. We can use the rain. And just some tropical downpours down here in southern Louisiana once again. So, you know, just kind of zooming into Oklahoma here and areas of Kansas and Texas. Just some pop-up activity. This evening, you see these, you know, Woodard, you know, you got some storms just south. We got some pop-up storms around Tulsa, north of Oklahoma City. Not too big of a deal. It's really what happens maybe later this evening. This is around like midnight tonight. You see these storms cruising through southwestern Kansas, and eventually a little bit of a flooding risk could develop in this area right here in southern Kansas, northern Oklahoma. Where we'll just kind of have a congealing of storms that kind of roll over the same areas. And these storms could produce very heavy rain, some gusty winds, and maybe a little bit of hail, but not a huge risk of severe weather the further east you get. So we will watch for that, and I will kind of zoom into the how much rain could fall in this area today between now and the next 24 hours. We'll actually take it to the next 30 hours here. 1 to 2 inches of rain. And the National Weather Service really likes the HRRR model with this, the HRRR model, showing 1 to 2 inches of rain right here along the Kansas-Oklahoma border. So it really likes the idea of what the HRRR model is showing here. So now up here in the north central U.S., we'll zoom into the Midwest and then the Ohio Valley. But let's take a look at the broad look at things first. We're going to continue to have some rain showers that drift through the Dakotas throughout the morning. Could get some small hail with some of these embedded in this trough. Dives down here into northern Minnesota. Some downpours for you for you folks tuning in from the UP of Michigan, Stephen. You guys could get some scattered downpours in the central UP today. Some rain could drift into southern Minnesota, northern Iowa, just pockets of storms here and there across the north central U.S. Impossible to nail all these, just a couple little clusters of storms. We're going to zoom into Nebraska too. Okay, we're about to do that here, but we're taking into this evening just stuff pivoting around this trough of low pressure. Showers will continue. You might wake up to some rainy conditions in the UP of Michigan, northern Wisconsin tomorrow. Wouldn't be surprised one bit. Just to zoom into a couple of these areas though. Nebraska first. Any leftover energy will trail on out. We'll get into this afternoon. This is around 4 to 5 p.m. Look at these storms firing in the northern half of Nebraska. I wouldn't be surprised. We have a little bit of a tornado threat with these, especially if they're more discrete. But, if you live in this section of Nebraska here, the northeastern 1/4 of Nebraska, if that makes any sense. But I would just watch out the entire eastern section of Nebraska. Storms could sweep through. Even eventually into the Lincoln and Omaha region. But storms will fire later this afternoon, drift through the eastern sections of the state of Nebraska, and then pretty much fall apart by the time we get into about midnight. So only a several-hour period. Storms fire here in the central portion of the state, and then they are, cause some issues for a few hours, and they're done with. But you definitely want to watch these. And in fact, we'll look at the updraft Felicity swath with these storms today. And it does indicate rotation with some of these. You see the highlighted colors, that's where some of these storms could be rotating in the eastern half of Nebraska today. Be aware of that, some gusty winds also. Now we move away a little bit further to the east, the Midwest, Missouri, Illinois, areas of southern Iowa, etc., including into this. Any energy will kind of drift away throughout the morning hours. Then we'll watch for more energy to refire. And this could happen in the northern half of Missouri. It could happen maybe in southern Iowa, but we'll watch for this area of energy that could develop into a pretty potent line of storms. We could get a slight risk issue where there's a marginal risk in this area. But I would be careful if you're in St. Louis later this afternoon. You could get a pretty nasty line of storms that moves in 3, 4, 5 o'clock this afternoon into St. Louis. For example, this run of the HRRR model shows a pretty worrisome scenario that eventually drifts into the southern half of Illinois. If you live there, you don't want anything like this to unfold. You're dealing with some nasty weather this morning, but this would cause some issues in the southern half of Illinois, and eventually getting into the southern sections of Indiana around 5 p.m. This could ooze a little bit to the north up to Lafayette, Indianapolis, but this is around 7 p.m. This is what this run of the HRRR model is trying to say is what's going to be going on. This could be posing a flooding risk, a tornado, a little small, very, very small tornado threat, but damaging winds. But we have this complex of storms draped across southern sections of Missouri all the way through areas of southern Illinois, southern Indiana, and eventually this could drift into the western half of Kentucky overnight, maybe oozing into the western areas and central areas of Tennessee. But this is around midnight tonight. Still got a lot of heavy rain moving through southern Missouri, eventually getting into the Boot Hill, Missouri, and then northern Arkansas into tomorrow morning. Now, the NAMS version of this, the NAM's not doing that great. I think some of this energy is extending a little bit further west with initializing, but it does introduce a quiet period this afternoon. But the NAM does the same thing as the HRRR model. In fact, I would say they are agreeing pretty well. It latches onto some energy that develops in sort of northern, north central Missouri, might affect Columbia, Missouri, drifts into the St. Louis area about 1 or 2 hours later than what the HRRR model is showing. So around 6 p.m. has a nasty line of storms developing and getting stronger as it moves over St. Louis. And then once again, the NAM is showing exactly what the HRRR model is saying. If you live in the southern half of Illinois, this is why I think we'll get an upgrade to a slight risk here. If you go back and you look at the Storm Prediction Center, folks, there's only a marginal risk right in here. I think you'll get a slight risk issued right into here, if I had to guess. That's my call here. That's my gamble of the morning. Slight risk right into here for this area that will get issued. So I'm gonna be watching this to see if I can be right on this, just to see if I'm at least decent at forecasting, right? So, but we'll go back to this, and we'll go back to the NAM, and you keep this going, guys, and then this line sort of dwindles apart in certain areas, but it might not. But it's still packing a punch in southern Missouri. So I'm telling you, if you live in, I'm going to circle an area right here, just a little bit closer look here. Because some people, I understand some people probably don't watch the video, they listen. So when I say things like right here and right there, you're probably like, man, I don't know what he's talking about. Let me look at my phone real quick. But if they're going to issue a slight risk, it's going to be right into here. I'm going to draw this area. I don't know, maybe right into here. I know that's kind of weird, but if they're going to bump it up a category, it's going to be there. You could extend this a little bit further into southern Indiana. So we'll see what happens. I'm very interested to see what happens on the update here in about an hour or so from the fine folks at the Storm Prediction Center. But the HRRR model, as far as predicted wind gust, it picks up on that line. Here it is. I mean, it just kind of spawns out of nowhere, right? Blast through St. Louis, moves through southern sections of Illinois, all of southern Illinois, and eventually gets all the way into Kentucky tonight. And we'll just take it all the way through the next 24 hours. And there it is. It really hits these areas of the southern half of Illinois. Seems like I said that about a million times. Very hard with 50, 60, 70 mile per hour wind gusts, with pockets down here also of the same in southern Missouri. Southern Indiana, even getting into Kentucky, even a little bit into Tennessee. And then you compare that with the NAM, and same situation. I mean, it really latches on to the same idea, right? I'm telling you, St. Louis needs to be careful today, later this afternoon, I would say. But a little bit further, and we already talked about Illinois, Indiana. This is really covering the rest of Ohio and Kentucky. And honestly, I just should have probably just showed Ohio. But I do want to mention the fact that we could get some of this energy that does kind of just get going here. That's kind of separate from this energy. We could get kind of some leftover boundary energy that gets going here in southern sections. In fact, let's look at the latest run here. Let's see what it's showing. Let's see if it's still showing that here. And see, the latest run not showing much of that energy here. It does show that line of storms. But no, it does. It shows it. So we could get some storms that form right near Cincinnati, down up to Dayton, right around that Kentucky-Ohio border. And then we just have to watch what happens and what follows afterwards. And this only goes out 18 hours. We have a line of storms sweeping across southern Indiana, a little bit of storm action into southwestern areas of Ohio, but we have to flip it back to this one. And, you know, it's not much different. It's moving a little bit faster. I would be aware if you just live in southern sections of Ohio. Now, there is a slight risk, actually, for southeastern Ohio. No slight risk for southwestern. So any storms that can fire in southeastern Ohio could certainly pack a punch. It's just, does anything get going in that area? And we look at the NAM a little bit earlier in the period, and the NAM really doesn't fire up much until like late tonight into southeastern Ohio either. So rainfall between now and the next 24 hours. The National Weather Service latches on to the idea of both the models too, with where these clusters or storms are going to be. 1 to as much as 2, maybe 2.5 inches of rain for, you know, eastern sections of Missouri, southern sections of Indiana and Illinois, all the way into areas of Kentucky too. So, you know, you can extend this a little bit further to the east too. I mean, this brings a good bit of rain into western, northern Kentucky, a couple inches of rain. So certainly a good bit of rain on the way. There's a little bit of a flooding threat too. So western U.S., kind of the same thing, rinse and repeat. And quite literally, you get into 2, 3 o'clock this afternoon, and we're just going to get monsoon energy, monsoon rain that gets going, and showers from eastern sections of Nevada, anywhere in Utah, areas of Wyoming too. And then we're going to get a lot of widespread shower and storm activity, especially for the central and western sections of Colorado early on. And eventually this will drift into the eastern sections of the state. But Arizona, New Mexico will have an opportunity for this too. Could get some strong to severe storms down here near Tucson once again, so be aware of that. And then, with the loss of daytime heating, everything kind of dwindles away. But as far as how much rain could fall in this area over the next 24 hours, just whoever gets hit by one of these downpours, could get a good bit of rain. It does like the idea of like southeastern sections of Arizona getting anywhere from a quarter inch to 3 or 4/10 of an inch of rain. So temperatures today, pretty hot across the southeast, different, but very hot all the way up the I-95 corridor too. Boston going for 90, low 90s today. New York City, very hot. New Jersey, the Delmarva, Mid-Atlantic, very, very warm conditions. Very hot across the south, 90s. A little bit more pleasant air with this upper trough digging down into the upper Midwest and north central U.S. You're just 70s, I think Minneapolis will sit at a comfortable around 80 degrees a day. The UP of Michigan will be nice, very, very nice for mid-July standards. And then out west, nothing too crazy yet, but the heat is going to build back in. So enjoy the bit of the cool down out here. This is more of just kind of average summer stuff. Above average, certainly, for some of the lower elevations between these higher elevations, valley floors, things like that, the valleys in the Pacific Northwest. But in general, it's not too bad, when you compare it to what was going on last week. So there is a threat of severe weather for tomorrow, one across the high plains, and then another, a little bit more of a higher risk across the I-95 corridor where you see that yellow, that's a level 2 out of 5. The dark green is a level 1 out of 5 slight risk. Tornado risk, less than 2%, so it doesn't show up. Wind threat, there's a damaging wind threat for some of the higher populated regions of the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic, all the way from Richmond, D.C., Baltimore, Philadelphia, New York City, all the way up to Springfield, Albany. There is a 15% risk of winds exceeding 55 to 60 miles per hour. Not much of a hail threat with tomorrow's risk besides in the plains. So. But there is a rainy pattern coming. A lot of people are wondering, what's going on with this summer? And I am too. It's like, dude, please rain. But, it's just kind of been a summer that's been void of, especially, not everywhere. I would say not everywhere. But here in the Carolinas, it's really been a summer that's just been void of thunderstorms, especially if you live in I would say the central portions of the Carolinas, even Georgia. But I'm going to show you just the European on what it shows between now and the next several days. This is starting tomorrow. And we make our way into tomorrow afternoon. Not much, just pop-up activity. You see this is just a global model. It's not a mesoscale model, so it's just going to show splotches of green and yellow and orange here and there. It's not going to show much outside of that. But we continue. We get into Thursday. We could have a line of storms surging through areas of the southern Mississippi Valley. And then we get into, I think, Thursday afternoon. This is when we start to get widespread thunderstorms, tropical downpours. Frontal boundary comes down and really stalls out for a couple days before probably dissipating through late this week into this weekend. And you start to see just more splotches of green, yellows, and orange. Just think of that as daily, afternoon, and even morning thunderstorms. And then loss of daytime heating. We get into Friday morning, quieter, and then we'll do it again for Friday afternoon. Widespread greens and yellows on your screen could have a flooding risk that could develop. And then, we get into Friday evening, then we do it again Saturday. Okay, just widespread. So just if you take anything from this, just know that the chances of showers and storms are going to be steadily increasing over the next couple of days. So if you're missing it over the last couple of days, it's raining at your grandpa's house or your dad's house up the road, and it's not raining at yours, and you're irritated, that could change. Your luck could change for sure for everybody. So, we even take it as far as like next Monday, next Tuesday. So it looks like a very rainy pattern's on the way. And for those states I missed, I'm going to move a little bit further to the north and east. Here, Wednesday, Thursday, it looks like for you folks a little bit further north, you don't have as good rain chances. But what you get in return is a nice, crisp air mass. I wouldn't say crisp, but a nicer air mass. You'll get a little bit of a cool down up here to the north. Us down here in the south, we'll get big-time rain chances, but we're going to get stuck in a very tropical air mass because of the rain chances. So, You actually get a little bit of a cool down up here. That's why you're not seeing much green, yellow, orange, red up here at all. It's because the cold front boundary is sagged and stalled to the south. So everybody on the northern side of that, pretty chill conditions. You're not chilly, but you're pretty much not going to get much rain. It's just going to be lower humidity and more comfortable. Now, as that you start to get a little bit more of a moist return as we start to get into next week, and then your chances of rain begin to kind of come back around this time next week, and we start to get widespread rains again. But rainfall for the southeast areas of the deep south, including areas of like the mid-south, mid-Atlantic, Ohio Valley. This is between now and next Monday morning. A lot of rain could fall in the Carolinas, making up for lost time. Deep south, a lot of areas have an opportunity to get some rain. So if you're kind of putting on your bifocals and trying to zoom in on a number on this screen, and, for example, if you live in South Georgia and you're only seeing these shades of blue, which would mean only a half an inch of rain between now and Monday morning, you're thinking, well, geez, that stinks. Don't look at that as your final solution. I think a lot of people do that a little bit too much, especially when it comes to forecasting snow. That's why I don't understand why some of the local news people, they'll show these graphics, these models that will show exact snowfall totals, like Atlanta is calling for 3.74 inches of snow, and quite literally some people will tell somebody, yeah, we're expecting three and 3/4 of an inch of snow here in Atlanta. And yeah, I just wish that we would do ranges. Like, for example, this says 3 inches of rain could fall between now and Monday morning in Columbia, South Carolina. I would probably say, hey, there's a possibility we could get 2 to 4 inches of rain between now and the next 6 days. That's probably the better way to say it, right? So, but anyways, that's all I got. God bless all y'all. Y'all have a wonderful day, and I'll talk to you again in the next video.